First and foremost, thank you for taking a minute out. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
You bet. So let's start our journey with living through COVID was a big deal. It set a lot of things in motion for all of us. How much of living through that pandemic era has been a part of your world now in this new 2025?
Well, in 220, we were all kind of, hibernating.
Yeah.
We couldn't go out, and yet I had made reservations to all the national parks to go with my family camping. I have three daughters, who are still alive and their families, and we had made all the reservations for all the national parks. And I said to the kids, I don't know whether we're going to be able to go, but if we can go, we're going. And because we had made the reservations, we went.
Yeah.
And we, of course, we couldn't go to restaurants. The restaurants were all closed, but we were camping. So we had food. We were able to go into, supermarkets and get food. And we had a fantastic vacation. And nobody was in the national parks. Nobody. We went to the Grand Canyon and we were, one of maybe 15 people overlooking the Grand Canyon. It was just a phenomenal experience. And we were the only three trailers in the campground because they would not allow anybody to come in on the day and unless you had signed up. And we, of course, had done this. I had done this over a year ago, and my grandchildren had a wonderful trip. We had a wonderful trip. So I was determined not to make, COVID the primary focus of my existence. So
Yeah.
we did as much as we could, without, interfering with people. And I had many, many friends who, after after COVID, stayed in the house, wore their masks, had gloves on when they met you. I was determined not to do that. I felt that this was a terrible, horrible virus. And I also felt that it was, it came from a laboratory. I did not think it was a natural thing. That was my basic thought. And so we got vaccinated. We did all the things we needed to do, but when it ended, I believe that I worked very hard at resuming my normal life, and my children did as well. So we were not as affected as many of my friends were, and some who are still, nervous and anxious about it, because I consider this a virus, a terrible, horrible virus. And, if you're proactive, you kind of serve yourself better than if you're reactive.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a brilliant story. I love that. I've never heard anything like that as far as going to national parks because I was of that mindset too. When it happened, I had teenagers in school, and my youngest is he's on the autism spectrum. So it was like we got out, we went to parks around, we drove around. It was like just staying active. Like I did not want to look at that period of my life and have any asterisk next to it. It's like we get one shot, we're monopolized. You either live it or you don't, no matter what happens. And you realize too how little control we have, but you do have control over things. You still can get in a car and go to national parks. You can control the way that you love people around you. There's things that you can do that can control your environment, even though we were in an uncontrollable situation.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%, 100%. And, we fared better than a lot of people because of that attitude.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So let me ask you this. If I put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids right now, it's career day, and one of the kids in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Well, I tell them that I was a teacher for a very long time and that I'm a writer
Yeah.
and that I'm a mother and a grandmother and I'm many, many things. And in your lifetime, you can be many things at the same time. And I became a writer because of an event. And writing is another means of communication. So I let the kids know that they can do their own writing, without introspection and, criticism about misspelling. And they just have to get their thoughts on paper and they become writers. And it's a wonderful means to communicate in this world where we text everything and
Yeah.
I'm on all these machines. It's a wonderful means of communication.
So what was the event that led you to write?
Well, the event for me was the fact that my son was one of the firefighters who died on September 11th, and he was
Wow.
23, and he was a new firefighter. This was his dream job. Uh, he had a college degree. He was a substitute teacher before and offered a permanent position, but refused because he had gotten a perfect score on both the written and the physical. But this was his dream job, and nobody expected him to die at 23. And I wanted children, because I'm an educator, I wanted children to understand that in your lifetime, terrible things can happen to you. But it's the way you react to those things and the lessons to be learned from those things that are really, really important. And so I wrote The Day the Towers Fell, which is the story of September 11th and the fact that people were just going to work to
Yep.
pay the bills for their family. They were doing nothing wrong, and people who hated Americans came and tried to destroy all of America, and they did not. They did not. And then the book about my son Christopher, is a story of his journey into adulthood and how he made a lot of mistakes and got into trouble sometimes. But no matter what he did in his life, I loved him unconditionally. He was my son. And I wanted kids to know that, your parents are there to guide you. And sometimes they have to reprimand you, and that's okay. But their job is to make sure you turn out to be a wonderful adult. And my son turned out to be a wonderful adult, and that's their job, and that they love you no matter what you do in life, no matter what mistakes you make. They'll forgive you. They'll be have your back. And I wanted parents to tell their children every day how much they love them. Because if you don't do that and something terrible happens, you have terrible, terrible regrets.
Yeah.
And then the third book that I wrote was a collection of stories written by parents and siblings who had lost somebody in September 11th. And I reached out to 9/11 family organizations, and I invited anybody who wanted to tell their story. And the perspective was the growing up phase, not babyhood, but, middle school, high school, into adulthood. And I told everybody that I wanted them to share stories about the people who they love dearly dying. And to their credit, they wrote phenomenal stories, and they were all different. And I didn't change the writing style because this was their own words. And the stories are just fantastic. And they came from not only the fire department, but the corporate world. And one of the victims' mothers wrote about her daughter being on the airplane. So it was, like a collection of wonderful stories. And I wanted kids to know that growing up is very, very hard. And you're not perfect, and you're not supposed to be perfect, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And if you have a wonderful family and you have love in your life, you turn out just fantastically because all these people did.
I wrote a piece that was in an anthology, a book on 9/11. I was backpacking. I was in my 20s. I flew to Paris on September 4th. I was in the back of a water taxi in Venice, Italy, and this guy was shooting his arms in the air. Nuevo York. And I'm like, "Are you talking about 93? What are you talking about?" Because I would cut myself off. I didn't really contact home. I just wanted to travel. I just wanted to be in the moment.
Right,
So
right,
then I figure out that something's happening in America. So I call my dad and I'm like, "What's up?" And like I said, he was from Brooklyn. He was a native New Yorker. And he's like, the one of the towers, one of the World Trade Center towers are falling down. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Because they didn't have TVs. Everything was jammed up at the time. I didn't know what was going on.
right,
But anyway, I had to find my way back to America. I had a flight that was supposed to go from Paris to Kansas City that didn't exist anymore. I ended up going through Vernazza, the poor man's Riviera in Italy, which was beautiful. And then finally, and it seemed the way the newspapers were reporting things and the pictures they had, it was really weird. But I ended up finally getting back, and I remember when I landed, I finally got to London, went through Gatwick, landed in St. Louis, and they didn't they showed a horrible Jennifer Lopez movie twice because they weren't going to show the news. They didn't want to show any of the
right.
pictures. So as we landed, somebody in the back of the plane started clapping, and by the time we hit the tarmac and we're going up, the whole plane erupted into applause. And that was it. We were finally back on American soil, and everything was instantly different. Like all these flags, all of everything changed
That's
overnight.
right.
You know,
That's
so
right.
it was
I,
wild.
I, prior to 9/11, I mean, people were patriotic,
Yeah.
but after 9/11,
Yep.
no matter what your, political affiliation, you became an American
Yep.
and you were pro-America. It was just one of the most remarkable and amazing sights. We felt that in our neighborhood,
Yep.
anybody that didn't support, the police, and they didn't support the fire department, were really, really put on the carpet, so to speak, and it was wonderful. I wish that time still remained.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get it back soon,
Yeah.
and people will be proud to be American again. I mean, there's a lot of us that are very proud to be American. And I often say to people, when they have a lot of complaints and they keep saying how terrible things are, go to another country.
Yeah.
Go to another country and live in the other country
Uh-huh.
and see the differences.
Oh
Because you're
yeah.
not going to be able to do what you're doing here
Sure.
over there, no matter what country that is. You don't
Sure.
have the same freedoms. And so instead of always complaining about things, try to embrace the beauty of what America is all about. And I think
100%.
we're in an age, I hope, where this is going to happen again. I hope. I'm
Yeah.
very optimistic.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. When you were a kid, what was your dream? What was your job, your ideal vision for your future?
Well, I wanted to be a nurse when I was a kid, and
Okay.
I volunteered in high school in a hospital, Lenox Hill Hospital, and every time I went in, I threw up from the smell.
Yeah.
And after 2 years of volunteering as a candy striper, I said to myself, I don't think this is the right job for me.
Yep.
So I had to change, and I went to college, and I was very good in math. And so I started majoring in math. And then I fell into psychology, and I absolutely love psychology. And I decided, well, I was going to be a child psychologist.
Yeah.
So I had minored in education, and when I graduated, they had a big campaign attracting teachers. And I thought, well, since I want to become a child psychologist, maybe I should find out if I like being with kids, and started to teach, fell in love with the job. Never, I got advanced degrees and other things, but I never left teaching. I really had a joyful, wonderful, fabulous career. And I worked with little kids for the most part. I taught between pre-K and grade 6, but my home base was kindergarten and first grade. And I loved being with the little kids. They're honest and frank and truthful, and they let you know how they feel all the time, and they hate you 1 minute, and the next minute they're giving you a hug. So it was a wonderful, wonderful life for me. And I retired, just before September 11th. My husband had retired. He was a deputy chief in the fire department, and he had retired. And I hated getting up to go to work, and he was in bed.
Yeah.
So when I got the time, the age, I retired, and it was just before September 11th, which really made a big difference to me because I would have had to retire after September 11th. I was really a mess,
Yeah.
losing my son, and I didn't
Yeah.
believe he was dead. Expected him to come home, and took me a long, long time to adjust, to that, but so my path in life has been a really wonderful one, and I've been guided, in the right direction. And so I'm still around, still kicking, and I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely you are. So let me ask you this. Who has been that inspiration for you that's allowed you to not only grow and write and teach and overcome, but just to be who you are? Who has been that bedrock for you in your life?
Well, for me, the bedrock is God. God has gotten me through everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know how people who did not have a belief in a supreme being got through 9/11. I
Yeah.
don't know how they did. That's how I got through. I would go to church and I would cry, and but I knew God, whatever the plan he had for me, he was going to give me the strength to get through. And you never forget. I'll never, my son is with me all the time. And I know it's going to sound strange and crazy, but in New York City, there are no parking spots, any
Yeah.
place. And I said to my son, who was going to get me a car when he was old enough to drive, I said, well, you can't get me the car, but you can get me parking places. And to this day, 23 and a half years later, every time I ask for a parking spot in New York, I get one. So I know he's around me,
Uh-huh.
and I know and
For
people
sure.
laugh at me, but they believe it because if I'm in the car with them, I say, Christopher will get us a spot. And sure enough, somebody pulls out and we get our spot. So people are all kind of coming over to my side of not being such a crazy woman. And maybe there's something to this. So
Saint Christopher, the parking saint. There you go. You got something
that's right.
coined.
That's right.
That's great. So let me ask you this. In the lore of New York, who is your favorite New Yorker? Who would you love to meet?
Well, I would love to meet Donald Trump. I
Yeah,
mean, he's not a New Yorker anymore, but I would love to meet him. I think he is courageous and brave. And in terms of, rich and powerful, I think most people are all the same.
yeah,
So, there are nice and there are not so nice. But, he stands out as being somebody of great character and perseverance and he's not perfect, certainly, but he's a person that has just great values. And he's also, in spite of what everybody says, he's a religious person.
right.
He may not have the same religion as me, but he believes in God and he believes that there's a path for him. So he's somebody I would love to meet and shake his hand and thank him,
Yeah. So let me
you
ask you
know.
this. As a writer, I'm curious, take me back to your childhood. What was the first book that made you either want to write or really made you want to read more?
Well, my favorite book is The Velveteen Rabbit.
Okay.
And it's a story, it's a mythical story about animals that come to life. And I just thought that was just a great story. I still, I have a copy and I read it. And as I got older, I fell onto a book called The Prophet
Yeah.
by Kyle
Oh
Gibran.
yeah.
That's a terrific book. And
Yeah.
I've reread passages of that for many, many years. And, just tremendous lessons, books with tremendous lessons, and I was, when we were in school, we all read. Reading was something we did. We didn't have the media, we didn't have the TV, we didn't have the shows that had been made out of books. We read the books first, you know what I mean? So I was a reader in school and I read a whole lot of books, but those are two that really, really stand out that I love even to this day.
Yeah. So how do you balance all this out? You're obviously you've had your career, you're a writer now, you're family oriented. What gets you up every day? What motivates you to create and to be the best version of you every day?
Well, I'm not sure how to answer that, except I get up every day and I say, thank you, God, for another day. Let me do something good and kind today. And that's my prayer every single day. So I'm not quite sure where the day will go. And sometimes it's a great day, and sometimes, it's not so good. And sometimes it's a bum day when I don't want to do anything but just sit in my chair and watch a TV show or something. But my path is different every day, and the older you get, the more appointments you have, with the doctor to make sure that you're physically fit. So that's included in my monthly plan, And I
Yeah.
have a great husband who supports me and has supported me for many, many years. So,
So, about a week or two ago, probably 2 weeks now, Jerry Seinfeld came through Kansas City. My wife got me tickets for Christmas. So we saw him, and it was in one of our huge venues downtown. And he was doing a bit where he was talking about the best part of his day is coffee. The coffee in the morning, and then everything goes downhill from there. It's like you can't beat that high that you get. But it was weird because when we were leaving, somebody kept saying Babylon, New York. And I was like, what are you talking about? And that's where he grew up. That's where my dad, when they left Brooklyn, they went to Babylon. And I had no idea that Seinfeld was from there. And they said that they knew somebody from the teenage years that knew Jerry. And he was always writing jokes, always talking about being a comedian. But yeah, so it's wild. Um,
well, it's a small world. You find out things that you didn't know that you knew. They're just discoveries during the day of connections, and I
yeah,
think we're all connected in some way, And if you're listening, you find out all these connections in the daytime, and you're amazed,
Yeah.
that there are things you didn't know that maybe you should have, or.
Yeah. I remember getting a book years ago called ESP, and it was just a basic exploration of how sometimes you'll have this weird feeling, and somebody will tell you, I was thinking about you, or something weird happens, and it's like the whole theory is that our spines is like an electrical column that has more electricity than a bolt of lightning. Like the fact that we all think that we don't share this energy in a profound way is weird because we do. We're all connected by it. But it's just amazing how weird things can happen. Like somebody can fly to Istanbul and run into somebody from their childhood. Like, how does that happen? Those weird little things.
Yes, yes. Well, Astoria, we've traveled a lot, Al and I, and for some reason, Astoria is very, very well known in Europe. And of course, it's a very Greek community.
Yeah.
So, whenever we say, oh, we're from Astoria, oh, I have a cousin, I have a neighbor, I have, and we laugh, do you know him? Well, we don't know him, but, it's nice that you know the town that we come from, but that happens a lot. And I really believe we are connected. I
Yeah.
believe we're all connected. And the ESP is something that I really think all of us possess. We don't hone into it. We don't pay attention enough. We don't listen enough. But if we did, we would be much more in tune with each other.
Yeah, we certainly would be. Well, I'm in Kansas City, so we're starting to get more well known than I've ever thought we would ever get known for. I mean, it doesn't hurt that we have a football team going back, which I can tell you right now, I was a kid watching them at training camp. I went through 30 years of darkness, okay? So when everybody's
Yeah.
like, "All right, yeah, we're tired of the Kansas City thing." We're not. We are definitely not. We're soaking it up. So, it's fun.
You should. You should.
Yeah,
We saw the last game, and it was really a nail biter. I tell you,
crazy.
very, very close. It was a good game. Some of the football games are not that good, but this was really, really tight, and
Yeah.
and just, you know, I don't know how, they pulled it off, but they did, and it was just a phenomenal game. I really enjoyed watching it. So I know
It
what you mean.
It's been happening like that all year long. There's just been squeakers all year long. So the only thing that I can say right now is this. Since it's happening in New Orleans, this team possesses a weird voodoo. There's some weird magic, Paul. I don't know what it is, but it's very strange. So I got to know, for somebody that's traveled and loves traveling as much as you, what has been one of the most unexpectedly beautifully magical places that you've been to? You didn't expect it to be that way.
Probably Portugal. We went
Okay.
to Portugal just recently, and it was really very, very different from Spain. Very different. I didn't expect it to be that different. Much more mountainous and rustic, and not as green, but really, really beautiful. We really enjoyed going there a lot.
Yeah.
And every place I go, I enjoy. It's always a new adventure, and
Sure.
you get, and people are basically all the same.
I get it.
They're all the same. When we had a chance years ago to go to China, because when I was a kid, you couldn't go to China and you couldn't
Yeah.
go to Russia, but we went to both, Al and I. I was amazed at how really beautiful and kind and wonderful, the Asians and the Chinese were, and how they revered the old.
Yeah.
That was something that was truly
Yeah.
touched.
Yeah.
They, that if you were an old person, you were treated with tremendous respect, tremendous, in every single little town we went to. And I thought, oh, gee, this is lovely. Even people that didn't know the older person would take care and help them. And, it was a great, great value system that they had. So
It's great. It's interesting. I've always heard that the Chinese food that we get has nothing to do with the Chinese food that you get in China.
that's correct. Yes, that's correct.
Like they're like,
It's true.
uh-uh.
Well, I have a very, very dear friend. Tomorrow is Chinese New Year. So happy Chinese New Year to
Yeah.
anybody who is, Chinese, Year of the Snake. But I have a very, very good friend who I just saw, this morning. And she taught me a lot about the Chinese culture. She taught me a lot about the Chinese culture. But we celebrate every year. I celebrate every year Chinese New Year, but they're just a wonderful, wonderful group. And they don't like to make waves and they
Yeah.
don't like to, be ostentatious and
Yeah.
very contrary to our, style. Very,
Yeah.
very different.
It's interesting. I have a jazz radio show and I hear about the Japanese about how they love and revere jazz. And they have like listening bars where they'll have jazz playing. They still bring LPs to have autograph, like the big, no compact discs or anything. And there's just kind of a dreamy romantic notion that goes into those Asian cultures where they really do hold on to revere the old world. Like America is so ready to move into everything AI, everything futuristic. It's like
Yeah.
all these tenets and foundations that have led to us being humans, the Darwinian notion of evolution. It's like we've just kind of let it go because Facebook is the new thing. Or you know what I'm saying? It's like this reverence of our roots that are way beyond
I
technology just erode away.
Well, I think traditions are very important. And
Yeah.
in our family, my grandchildren know my roots, which are Irish and Greek, and my husband is Italian, and they know the traditions that we grew up with that, were important to us. And they, they often say, my husband is called Papa. Papa makes the best meatballs. I said, well, you'll have to wait until you're old enough to cook and you'll get I mean, they are old enough, but they don't cook.
Yeah.
Get the recipe, so that when you're, grown up and married, you can make Papa's meatballs. But, traditions, they center you and they help you to, whoever you're going to become. They're a
Yeah.
base. And I think, in today's world, that's being eroded with all of and certainly I'm very anxious about AI. I think it's not necessarily a good thing. If you use AI for medical procedures, maybe that's something that could be, but for people, you get on the phone and you're speaking to somebody who is an AI operator, you never get the answers you want. Never.
Yeah.
Because you can't answer the question that's not in the
I
program.
know.
So
I know. And we know humans have a way of just nosediving things. Just it
yes,
happens, right?
that's
So
right. That's
so there's a restaurant in Kansas City called Tasso's, and it's one of my favorite places. It's a Greek restaurant, so it's the place I go to. They still have the belly dancers on Friday nights.
love it.
The ouzo's flowing. It's like it's fun. I love it every time I get to go in there. Um,
I'm sure you've had spanakopita and
oh,
you've had
forget about it.
baklava and all of
Oh,
that.
all of it, all of it. Just and you're getting me thinking now. I'm gonna have to reroute this week and get in there again. So it's good. So I got to know in this very full and fulfilling life that you've had with ups and downs and being a teacher and a writer. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what are you the proudest of?
I'm proudest of the fact that I have wonderful children and I have great grandchildren, and my children have been very, very good parents and established a wonderful base. We're close to all of our grandchildren. I have 10 of them, and we speak to them. I have a daughter who lives in Texas, so we don't see her as much as we do the daughter that lives in Brooklyn and the one that lives in Queens. But we talk to them on the phone. I'm not very big, at texting, but we talk on the phone and we've seen them. We've made an effort to go down, but they're going to be phenomenal adults, and they're emerging now. I have college students, who are grandchildren and two that will be going to college. So they're getting bigger each year. But I'm very proud of the fact that our family has extended into a good place where everybody is a solid citizen and they have terrific values and they have a good work ethic and they don't mind hard work. And the thought of them staying at home and working, without going into work never has appealed to them. They're doers, and I appreciate that. So I'm very proud of that.
Yeah.
I'm proud of that.
So at the end of the day, Maureen, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, everyone that reads your books, everyone that knew you as a teacher in all these different lights and capacities. But you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Well, I'm a person that has great gratitude. I'm grateful for a whole lot of things. And, my life has not been perfect. I've had some really, really bad, moments, as everybody does. But my feeling about life is that you stand up and you do the best you can to make sense of why this terrible thing has happened. And you don't say, why is it me and not somebody else? Because you don't want that to be. So I'm very grateful. I have a grateful heart. And so I would say the perception of me is being a very grateful person. And I'm happy as well. I'm a very happy person. And I like to, bring happiness and merriment, wherever I go.
It shines. I need this dose of New York every once in a while. And I think about my grandma Rose, how triumphant and happy she was. When I talked to her, there was always this, it's just, I miss, you can't, if you don't know it, you can't put your finger on it, but there's just this New York thing. I remember when I used to go up, they had a pastry shop, up there in Long Island. I went up there in 95 and I saw the towers and I did the tour. And my cousin was a real hipster and was awesome and had sushi for the first time in Greenwich Village and just did the whole thing. And I would sit back there and all those guys would start talking at the back of the pastry shop and I would just be in stitches. There's just the New York way. There's this warm analog glow. I miss it. So you exude it. It's been wonderful. So before we get out of the door here, so to speak, where can people pick up the books? Where can people reach out, learn more about you, any of the good business? Where do they go?
All right. Well, the publisher that has rewritten the books is oh, isn't this awful? Is ex I'm
We'll put it in
thinking
the
of the
show
original
notes.
publisher. What? Yeah. And uh, the I have a website called Maureen Santora Books.com, and on that is all of the information. I also have a scholarship fund in my son's name, and we're just currently putting up the new question. There's a question that I uh, I have every year for the kids to write an essay, and if they win, we have 5 judges, and we've been doing this for 23 years. But we That's on the website as well. There's a link to the scholarship, and there's a way to contribute if you want to contribute to the scholarship fund. 100% of we're a 501(c)(3). 100% of the donations go to the kids' scholarships. None of us take a single penny, and we haven't done anything, in the last 20. But the books are on Amazon. They're on Barnes and Noble, and people can go on and take a look and see, if these books, and for the most part, they're for a younger generation. The first two, The Day the Towers Fell and My Son Christopher, are for emergent readers, beginning readers. And the We Remember is for more high school, college, and anybody who wants to read about the stories, but the stories are wonderful. And I feel very proud of being able to do this,
Yeah.
at a time that was very, very difficult. It was cathartic, and it helped me tremendously.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. Marie, what an abundant and buoyant soul you have. Thank you so much for shining your light,
Thank you.
sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Well, it was wonderful talking to you, and keep your artwork. It's beautiful, and I'm very pleased to see it. It's been a great, great joy speaking to you as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.